You're listening to the Health Courage Collective Podcast, episode 77. What even is health? Welcome to the Health Courage Collective Podcast, the show for women who are too busy to slog through hours of generalized, inapplicable, and often contradictory health information, but too smart to ignore that a few minutes of focused attention now can prevent years of suffering in the future. I'm your host, Christina Hackett, a pharmacist who doesn't want you to live on prescriptions, a certified coach specifically trained to maximize your potential, and a compulsive learner obsessed with preventative, cutting-edge, holistic, and integrative medicine. I'm on a mission to increase your physical and mental resilience so you can fearlessly look forward to your next 40-plus limitless years. Your time is now. Let's go. Hello, and welcome to another episode. I'm so glad you're here with me today. If you are listening to this on the day it publishes, we've got 4 days left till Christmas. What is that? Calling birds? 4 calling birds. No, I guess it's backwards. So if Christmas is day 12, today would be day 8? 8 maids of milking? Not sure how that affects your day, but tomorrow you can get together with 8 other girlfriends and dance. I'm sure you're going to. I hope you're ready for Christmas and feeling relaxed and right on track with your health and wellness goals. Good for you. How is your vitamin K consumption? Have you considered adding vitamin K2 to your life if it wasn't already a part of your routine? I think you absolutely should. Stronger bones, less sensitive teeth, and a reduced risk of heart attack? Yes, please. That's a really easy way to age like a professional. Today, we're going to talk about what health even means. Everyone's definition is going to be different, so does it even matter? I think so. I think it matters a lot. And if you don't have your own specific definition that you could tell me right now of what exactly being healthy means to you, I would encourage you to create one today. We have a few minutes right now. Let's get to it. This is so important because, like I always say, you can't even aim for and certainly not hit a target if you don't know where it is or what it looks like. And if you remember the quote from Tal Ben-Shahar I shared a couple of weeks ago in the Holiday Drift episode, when the injunction to just live our life becomes a license not to choose, we end up being pulled along by others' choices, simply behaving the way we always have in the past, passively reacting to life rather than actively creating the life that we really want to be living. We must commit ourselves to the idea that there are far more possibilities than we normally see, and then to the effort that it takes to examine these possibilities and choose the one that's best for us. End quote. I think most people exercise their license not to choose more often than not. Good thing we're not most people, because I don't want you accepting someone else's definition of health. I generally find that people will talk about someone being healthy or unhealthy, and everyone just goes along with it like it's just an indisputable fact because someone said so. But what does that even mean? I think the most common thing that's confabulated with health is body mass. Being thin isn't the same thing as being healthy. Maybe next up would be exercising regularly. Doesn't necessarily mean you're healthy. Everyone else likes us to accept their fuzzy definition of healthy. The dictionary definition of healthy is the state of being free from illness. Do you want that to be the target you're aiming for? Is it inspiring to you? Does it get you out of bed in the morning? Yes, today I can't wait to be free from illness. Maybe, especially if you've just gotten over being sick. Most doctors would consider you healthy if you don't have any symptoms, or if they run a test and it comes back in the normal range. But the normal range is a median of the population at large. Do you want to be the same as the population at large? I'll love you anyway if you say yes, but I hope you don't. Just because something's, quote, normal doesn't mean it's optimal for you. This is a problem with a lot of lab test values. Normal is not the same thing as optimal, but also with our whole belief system. Are you ready for this? There are so many cool people who do so much cool research, but probably my favorite is Dr. Ellen Langer. I've talked about her before. Here's a quote from her. In most of psychology, researchers describe what is. Often they do this with great acumen and creativity, but knowing what is and knowing what can be are not the same thing. My interest, for as long as I can remember, is in what can be, and in learning what subtle changes might make that happen. The psychology of possibility first requires that we begin with the assumption that we do not know what we can do or become. Rather than starting from the status quo, it argues for a starting point of what we would like to be. From that beginning, we can ask how we might reach that goal and make progress toward it. It's a subtle change in thinking, although not difficult to make once we realize how stuck we are in culture, language, and modes of thought that limit our potential." End quote. See, I told you she's a rock star. Positive psychology is so awesome. Switching from studying what makes people dysfunctional to what makes people thrive. But the psychology of possibility, that's next level awesome. Rather than starting from the status quo, it argues for a starting point of what we would like to be. This would be like if you wanted to teach a raccoon to tap dance, instead of starting with the status quo, which is that raccoons don't tap dance, at least not that I've ever heard of, you would start with what you want. Traditional psychology would conduct well-designed studies focusing on whether, when treated with a specific intervention, the majority of raccoons showed a particular effect. If they didn't, then it would be concluded that raccoons cannot be taught to tap dance. But the psychology of possibility would look to see if even one raccoon could be taught to make one tap, and then another. Then perhaps it's possible. Can you imagine the tap shoes you'd have to get and how you'd get them on the raccoon? We've had a raccoon problem in our neighborhood for the last year or two. They keep going on our roof and pooping up there and killing pigeons and leaving their dead carcasses on our roof. And they killed 3 of our pet chickens and ripped up our neighbor's expensive patio furniture. Ugh. So I know that they're nimble and smart and ridiculously annoying, but still somehow kind of cute. Teaching one to tap dance may not be the most worthy goal, although if there were a YouTube video of a tap dancing raccoon, you know you'd watch it. But it does illustrate a good point, that when making plans for your longevity and long-term health, don't start with the status quo, that people inevitably lose their physical and mental abilities as they age. But start with what you want. Maybe you want to make a bigger impact and have more adventures as you get older. Whatever it is, if it doesn't seem possible and you really, really want whatever it is, resolve to be the first one ever. There has to be a first. If it's a long shot, resolve to do whatever it takes to have a 99% chance of being in the 1% of people who achieve that outcome. More is possible than we acknowledge, and our potential is literally unknowable. But know this, it's bigger than you think. Hey, I just wanted to quickly interrupt and ask if you really love your protein bars. If not, you might want to check out Built Bars. Built Bars have 15 to 19 grams of protein from whey and only 130 to 180 calories and 4 to 8 grams of sugar per bar, depending on what flavor you choose. They're so good. I eat one almost every day. Every flavor is covered in real chocolate and they taste like a candy bar, as long as you've never tasted a real candy bar before. Just kidding. I'm totally kidding. They may not be quite as decadent as your favorite candy bar, but they're seriously good, especially for 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar. They have tons of flavors and textures to choose from. I always order the 18-bar variety box plus a box of whatever's new or strikes my fancy. My favorite is peanut butter brownie, but the seasonal candy cane brownie is awesome when it's that time of year, and the cookie dough and cherry barcia are so good too. If you want to give them a try, there's a link in the show notes that will get you 15% off your first order as my gift to you. You can't go wrong. Okay, back to the episode. I could talk about this forever, but just know that some things you think are impossible are merely difficult. Really, 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 really very extremely difficult, but not impossible. You know that I love crazy Swedes, right? In his book Spartan Up, Joe DeSena tells the story of a Swedish guy named Göran Kropp, who rode his bicycle from Stockholm to the base of Mount Everest, then climbed to the top of Mount Everest with no Sherpa and no oxygen tank. Then he climbed back down, and he pedaled his bike back to Stockholm. Insane. Really, really, really difficult, but not impossible. And the fact that he did it means that something even a little more next level insane is possible too, like how it was universally agreed that it was completely and totally impossible for a human to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. Then, on May 6th, 1954, Roger Bannister did it, and it wasn't very long at all until another person did it after that, and then another, because suddenly it wasn't impossible anymore. There had to be a first. Göran Kropp, Roger Bannister, and maybe you. Another thing along those same lines is that oftentimes when we think we're using words to describe reality, we're actually creating reality. We explain the, quote, facts of the situation. My disease is incurable. I'm just not very flexible. I don't tolerate cold well. I have weak ankles. Blood draws give me anxiety. I can't eat healthy food because my family refuses to eat vegetables. Everyone has to move to a single-story house by the time they turn 50. I'm past my prime. Which is not to say that some of those things don't matter or that there's something wrong with us if we need to do some problem solving, but our experience is different based on the words we use to describe it. We co-create our reality by the way we choose to describe what's happening. Another great quote from Ellen Langer is, "Too many of us believe that the world is to be discovered rather than a product of our own construction and thus to be invented." And she was talking about health-related outcomes. She has some crazy cool studies about aging and eyesight and caloric burn and placebos and cancer. All are heavily influenced by the way we describe our experience of them. Here's another example. With respect to cancer, being in remission means that we are waiting for it to return. If it does return, the recurrence is seen as part of the same cancer. Psychologically, this may lead us to feel defeated. For each new cold we beat, however, we think, I've beat this before, so I can easily beat it again. If the cancer comes back, however, we think, it's winning. I'm just not as strong as it is. Surely the cancer will in some ways bear a similarity to the last cancer, but in other ways, it's just as surely different. Our language leads us to see the similarities in recurring episodes of cancer, while with the common cold, we see the dissimilarities. Of course, the stakes are so much higher with cancer, but that is even more reason to consider our language choices." End quote. Okay, one more quote from Dr. Langer, part of yet another long discussion we won't have time for, and it's a little out of context, but I like how she says, "I want to be clear that I'm not against medical tests. I'm arguing against mindless reliance on them and the mindless state they can lead to." End quote. It's a tricky landscape to navigate, but learning how to get the right medical tests and diagnoses without allowing them to lead you to a state of mindlessness regarding your health is important. You can use tests to become less mindful of your own body, or more mindful and more connected. If you see your mind and body as part of the same entity, you have exponentially more power, and you can use your body to influence your mind and your mind to influence your body. Pretty amazing. So if we have a goal to be healthy, in air quotes, what does that even mean? That's what we're here figuring out, right? We know we need to behave in healthy ways, but what does that even mean? Society might say it's taking statins to reduce your cholesterol, not eating salt to avoid high blood pressure, long-distance running to reduce your risk of heart attack, and eating kale to avoid cancer, or whatever they're trying to sell you. Since our mind and our body are part of a single entity, we want to act with a healthy mind. Science definitively shows that the healthiest people in the world act in a certain way. We're all driven by our perceived prospects for our future. We buy a donut in anticipation of how it will taste in 60 seconds. We put on our shoes so our feet will be protected when we go outside in 5 minutes. We show up at work so we can collect our paycheck in 2 weeks. You get the idea. According to Dr. David Hawkins, 80% of people in the world are driven to act out of avoidance or fear, and 20% act to approach challenges. And I didn't see a specific statistic on this, but most people are driven by short-term goals. Later today, maybe tomorrow, or a fuzzy, indistinct sense of the next few days or weeks. The healthiest people are the 20% who approach challenges. They see them as obstacles they can overcome and be the better for it. The unhealthiest people avoid them. They see them as threats. They stress out about them and will go to great lengths not to even have to think about them. The healthiest people also have a longer event horizon and a very clear picture of exactly what they want. Dr. Benjamin Hardy says he has heard some people say that they think humans have not yet evolved to think years or decades into the future. Okay, interesting, but we can if we decide to. We can make it a practice, and the payoff is awesome. In his book, Be Your Future Self Now, Dr. Hardy says, most of us are dealing with so many immediate battles that it's hard to lift our gaze above the present moment. It is a law of power, however, that the further and deeper we contemplate the future, the greater our capacity to shape it to our desires. End quote. Do you want to increase your capacity to shape the future to your desires? Yes, please. The clearer you are about your purpose and goals, the more the how just takes care of itself. Without a specific conscious purpose, the how becomes conflicted and chaotic. Where do you start? What's most important? How do you decide? That's when you start to drift and eventually other people decide what you focus on. And way worse than that, you feel like you're constantly failing. You're not good enough. You're not doing enough. You just can't figure it out. Nonsense! You could get the best advice in the world from the top coach in the world about how to train, what to eat, how many rest days to take, how to recover, etc. But if that's a rock climbing coach and you're preparing for a UFC fight, you're going to have some problems. Side note, I met a top-ranked UFC fighter last week and she was the cutest, sweetest girl, very petite and soft-spoken. Anyway, you have to know the game you're playing before you can possibly know how to play it, how to prepare for it, what matters, and what's completely irrelevant. So let's do it. Are you ready? What is your specific definition of health? I think it would be worth your time to take a few minutes to get really clear. Write it down. Pause this if you need to and do it right now. What exactly do you want? What specifically do you want to be able to do with your body? How do you want to feel on a daily basis? Don't say good. Describe it in detail. How long do you want to live? What do you want your final years to be like? What specific mental tasks do you want to be able to do in your 90s? How about physical? Who do you want to help? What specific impact do you want to have? What do you want people to say about you at your funeral? Remember that it's a law of power that the further and deeper you contemplate the future, the greater your capacity to shape it to your desire. This is so important, but it also doesn't mean that there will never be unanticipated hardships or that everything will go smoothly. I so love what my heroic mentor, Brian Johnson, who I got to spend 3 days with last week and high five and say hi and such, says the greatest risk to our achieving what we really want is. The greatest risk is our belief that it should be easy or fast or both. Guess what? It's supposed to be hard. And guess what else? Hard can be fun. It won't always be, but we can be intermittently joyful in the midst of struggle and setback. If we expect that everything's always going to go according to our plans, we're going to be disappointed and frustrated a lot. But if we learn how to see our progress within the constraints of our reality and realize that the obstacle is the way to get strong enough to live the life we want, magic starts to happen. Is your definition of the health you want solidified yet? Is the picture specific and crystal clear? I think it's good to have your specific yet general description of health and then have numerical targets that support that definition. Those aren't the main definition and they might change over time. You could get out of control crazy with all those. If your definition of health was every lab value and physical measurement possible, that would be insane. If you're having a hard time with too many ideas bogging you down, like, well, my definition of health is to be 22% body fat, be able to squat 300 pounds, have a C-reactive protein of less than 5, and a VCO2 measurement that shows I burn fat for fuel at rest, yada, 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 then ask yourself why. Why do you want those things? Will you be completely self-actualized when someone hands you a lab report with a fasting insulin level of 7? No. So why do you want that? I want you to optimize your physical health because I don't want to live in a world without your zest and soul force influencing society. We need you, and we need you to be powerful. I mentioned that I just got back from my Heroic Coach Conference and Level 2 Coach Certification. Woohoo! And what I love so much about the heroic community and philosophy is that our definition of a hero is someone who has strength for two. It's about service and having the capacity to lift others until they can lift themselves and eventually also develop the strength for two. And a hero's secret weapon is love. That means a lot to me. So I have that as part of my definition of health. I want my body, no matter how old it is, to have the ability to adapt to an imposed demand. Whether that's a demand on my strength, power, agility, endurance, speed, energy, balance, cognition, faith, moral values, courage, immunity, ability to detox, ability to recover, ability to heal. I want to, from a macro holistic level down to a subcellular level, be able to gracefully handle and grow stronger from a workload. I want to be able to handle at least double a typical workload and feel great doing it. Remember that I don't want your definition of health to be the absence of disease. I mean, you can if you really want to, but I think you can do so much better than that. There's also a lot of talk about being able to maintain your activities of daily living. If that's inspiring to you, then okay. But I don't want to spend my life striving not to lose the ability to tie my shoes. I want to be able to tie other people's shoes at the top of a mountain in a third world country or whatever. That doesn't really make any sense. But I want to have the energy and power to meaningfully contribute to something bigger than myself. I want to take care of my cells and organelles and systems and organs such that I am up to the challenge of living a bigger life. A life that expands as I get older rather than shrinks back. I want to approach challenges and be pulled forward by my potential, not just to try to avoid threats, and certainly not to stay in the normal range. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Then, of course, all the little sub-goals can fall into place. If I want to be capable of handling and getting stronger from any challenge, what nutrient levels do I need? What would be my optimal body fat percentage? How much muscle mass do I want? What should my blood pressure be? How much weight do I want to be able to lift? How long should I be able to focus my mind? My VO2 max, my HRV, my coronary artery calcium score, yada, yada, yada. The how starts to take care of itself. How about you? I'd love to hear what your definition of health is. I hope it goes against what is commonly accepted as normal as we age. I hope it's inspiring and exciting and is about approach rather than avoidance, gain rather than avoidance of loss. And remember, it's not black and white. This is health and this is illness. You're one or the other. It's a continuum from almost dead to thriving so much you could barely stay inside your own skin. Whatever your definition of health is, imagine an unknowable expanse to the right of that on your continuum, because our actual potential is literally unknowable. We're capable of more than we could even dream up. If you've ever heard of the British men's Olympic rowing team from 1998, they turned things completely around and ended up winning the gold medal in the Sydney Olympics in 2000 by running everything they ever did through the filter. Will it make the boat go faster? Should I hang out at the pub tonight? Will it make the boat go faster? Do I really have to wake up early and run outside in the cold? Will it make the boat go faster? I'd love for you, to the extent that it's inspiring and joyful to you, to ask yourself a version of that question often. Even if our ideal definition of health feels disappointingly far away, everything we do has the potential to move us along the continuum a millimeter closer to health, or a millimeter farther away. And when you're faced with choices, you can ask yourself, will it make the boat go faster? Or will it ooch me one notch closer to being able to adapt to imposed demands on my body as an 80-year-old? Or whatever your thing is. If the tiny steps we make are in the right direction, then we're winning. An easy way to evaluate this can be that, generally speaking, the further you diverge from the practices of your ancestors, the further you're probably moving toward the illness side of the continuum. Sitting all day, only artificial light, plastics, processed food, drinking sugar, digital news, you get the idea. We're not evolved to thrive that way. Next time you have a choice to make, think about which direction it will move you on your continuum and how essential it really is. Will it make the boat go faster? Will you be more likely to have the strength for two if you drink kefir or kombucha? Maybe. Is it the most important lever you can pull to slide along that continuum? Probably not, but it could be. Baby steps are fine, and I'm certainly not knocking kefir. I have some in my fridge right now, but you will get the biggest gains along that continuum by doubling down on the fundamentals. I'd love to help you do that. Install habits to run on autopilot around the basics, and you'll be way, way ahead of the game. The unsexy stuff is for sure what will make the boat go faster. If you do the things other people aren't willing to do, you'll achieve what other people aren't able to do. Did you decide what you want? What you want to be doing at age 70, 80, 90? What you want to feel like when you wake up in the morning of your 100th birthday? How deeply you want to be able to focus and how connected you want to be to the world? Who you want to help? What difference you want to make? You can shape your future, but you have to be intentional about it. And it actually makes it easier because it starts to become more obvious what nonsense you can ignore. If you don't want 100,000 Twitch followers liking your abs, then there's a lot of garbage that you can just ignore. I don't even know if you can have followers or likes on Twitch. You know what I mean. What is health? You get to decide whatever you want. And please don't be reasonable. Go big, and then take baby steps and big leaps along your continuum in that direction. Keep your 90s in mind. You're going to rock 2073. I can see it now. Can you? Ellen Langer says, questioning presumed limits is the essence of the psychology of possibility. Asking why we can't become better even when we feel at our best and our healthiest is the only way we will ever know how good we can be. And Eric Butterworth says, faith is expectancy. You do not receive what you want. You do not receive what you pray for, not even what you say you have faith in. You will always receive what you actually expect. End quote. So why not expect to love getting chronologically older and expect to get stronger and feel better as you do? That's like you. Next week, we're going to talk about the fourth macronutrient. Until then, don't accept anyone else's definition of health, and don't be normal. Thank you so much for tuning into the Health Courage Collective podcast. I am truly honored that you have paid me the enormous compliment of your time and attention. I would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem,